The story follows Minjun, a young man plagued by weakness and severe poverty, making him a frequent target for bullies. Compounding his difficulties is his unrequited love for a wealthy girl, Yana, who harbors a deep disdain for him specifically because of his financial invisibility. This entire dynamic, however, is set to be overturned. A mysterious virus begins rapidly transforming people into flesh-consuming zombies, throwing the world into a post-apocalyptic chaos where survival is paramount. In this new reality, money becomes worthless paper. Ironically, Yana, the very girl who previously despised Minjun, finds herself desperately needing to stay close to him simply to stay alive. But to understand the context fully, the story first rewinds to the time before the outbreak. It depicts a standard summer morning within Minjun's apartment. He is deeply asleep, his computer still running from a late-night gaming session. His rest is shattered by the harsh ringing of his phone alarm. Like most people, he finds the sound grating and reluctantly reaches out to silence the device. Knowing he must get ready for school, Minjun forces himself out of bed. Venturing into the kitchen, he finds a note from his mother stuck to the fridge, indicating she has already left for work and he needs to sort out his own breakfast. Soon after, having changed into his school uniform, Minjun leaves his sparsely furnished, dimly lit apartment. Living in this less affluent area, his eyes are drawn to the imposing luxury skyscrapers standing opposite his building. He can't help but feel envious of the young people residing there, contrasting their lives with his own difficult existence in what he perceives as the slums. Shaking off the feeling, he starts his walk towards Siangin High School. School life offers little respite for Minjun. He predictably encounters the resident bullies who single him out seemingly without cause. While Minjun suffers on the floor, the leader of this group, Park Songbin, an 18-year-old from second-year class 3, mocks him. Songbin's torment is interrupted by a sharp voice belonging to Yana, who arrives with her group of friends. She expresses distaste for Songbin's childish crap, criticizing his constant bullying of weaker students. It's clear she doesn't favor Minjun either, finding him equally pathetic, but she objects to Songbin disrupting the school environment with his antics. Yana, also 18 and from Class 2, Section 3, is identified. Songbin quickly shifts his demeanor, acting overly familiar with Minjun as if they were close friends, dismissing Minjun as merely the class mascot to imply the bullying was harmless fun. Yana isn't swayed, reiterating that he's causing unnecessary disruption in the hallways and compromising the school's decorum. She tells Songbin to take his playing around outside the school premises. Songbin retorts, suggesting Yana is perhaps the one who despises Minjun the most, implying she's being hypocritical. Yana defends herself, admitting she finds Minjun unattractive, ugly, but pointing out that, unlike Songbin, she doesn't physically assault him. The story clarifies that Yana and Minjun are classmates and have known each other since middle school, much like Minjun's history with Songbin. Following this exchange, Songbin invites Yana to hang out later, mentioning he's meeting someone new. Yana refuses point-blank, recalling a negative experience from the last time she accepted his invitation. Apparently, they ended up at Minjun's semi-basement apartment, which she found repulsively smelly, messy, and an undeniable symbol of poverty. She declares she won't go through that again. Her high standards stem from her own affluent background. She lives in the very high-end apartment complex Minjun envies. Her parents are influential figures, a hospital director and another professional, meaning she was born into privilege. Yana is highly popular, frequently posting updates on social media and admired by many at school. She also excels academically, standing out for both her looks and her grades. There are even rumors she plans to move to the US the following year for her studies. Despite the seemingly perfect exterior, she possesses a significant flaw, an intense dislike for men she considers weak and financially insecure. Minjun, in her view, is the prime example of everything she detests. A flashback provides further insight into their history. Back in 8th grade, when they shared a class, Minjun gathered the courage to approach Yana. Her response was filled with disdain and annoyance. She viewed him as a smelly brat who followed her persistently like a bothersome mosquito, something she deeply resented. Even though their homes were in the same direction, she couldn't bear walking near him and demanded he take a different path to avoid his perceived smell. This incident left no doubt in Minjun's mind. Yana utterly loathed him. Regarding scents, Minjun himself noticed Yana always smelled pleasant, a fragrance he associated with wealth. Under normal circumstances, such humiliation would foster hatred in the recipient. However, Minjun's feelings for Yana remained unchanged, his loyalty was almost irrational. He continued to sit near her despite her relentless mockery and insults. This pattern repeated year after year, same school, same class, same unrequited crush. He never lost hope, although he did begin to question his own sanity, acknowledging that perhaps only a madman would continue to love someone who ridiculed him constantly. This encapsulates Minjun's daily reality: physical abuse from Songbin and emotional torment from Yana, the life of someone utterly downtrodden. Later, Minjun is seen with his two friends. Both are deep in conversation about anime, identifying them as otakus. The heavier-set friend seems particularly passionate about the subject, while the thinner one beside him, Bei Sounho, admits he hasn't kept up with recent anime releases. Meanwhile, Minjun remains silent amongst his friends, seemingly lost in his own world, like a non-player character in the background. To clarify the cast of characters, the scrawny friend was Ba Sunho, aged 18, and the heavier friend was Bung Jun, also 18. Sunho and Bung Jun were in different classes from Minjun, but they were his closest companions, sharing a similar disposition. The key difference was that they weren't targets of bullying like Minjun was, a fact that stirred envy within him. He reasoned that they were simply fortunate, while he was the one burdened with all the misfortune life had to offer. His introspection was broken when his friends inquired if he was interested in attending a Luminina concert. They offered to get extra tickets if he was keen. A promotional image of a model on a phone screen was shown, seemingly attractive, but Minjun felt indifferent to such things. He had, in truth, lost all interest in idols. His friends were surprised and considered he was missing out. Reflecting on it, they noticed Minjun's increasingly gaunt and lifeless appearance. As they left, they couldn't resist making light-hearted, albeit insensitive, remarks about Minjun's seemingly unfounded depression. In class, Minjun simply longed for the day to end, hoping to escape his miserable existence. He then overheard Songbin and his group boasting about an encounter with a random guy who had dared to glare back at them when they tried to provoke him. They acknowledged the guy seemed intimidating, but they confidently asserted that Songbin could have easily overpowered him. They revealed this individual had come from North Korea to South Korea, and they mocked him for supposedly abandoning his parents and fleeing to save himself. As they continued their derisive talk, the very person they were ridiculing, Kang Haekiel, appeared and overheard their conversation. Unsurprisingly, Haekiel was not willing to tolerate their insults. Songbin's ego was bruised by Haekiel's dismissive stare, prompting Songbin to grab Haekiel by the collar. However, Haekiel, unfazed by this aggression, calmly advised Songbin not to speak ill of others without expecting repercussions. Songbin refused to release his grip, but before the situation escalated into a fight, his lackeys intervened to calm him down. Eventually, Songbin let Haekiel go, but not without issuing a death threat. Throughout this confrontation, Minjun remained in the background, absorbed in his own thoughts about when he could finally escape the torment of school. When school dismissed for the day, Minjun began his walk home, his mind preoccupied. He was seriously contemplating dropping out of school, seeing it as his only viable escape from his wretched life. He was determined, there was no turning back. It was at this moment that Songbin and his gang intercepted him. They seemed almost pleased to see him. Songbin demanded cigarettes and ordered Minjun to ask a woman at a nearby convenience store to buy them, exploiting Minjun because they were underage. Minjun recognized this as another instance of Songbin's bullying and, finally, he had had enough. Instead of complying, he simply ignored them and continued walking home. Songbin, enraged by being ignored, predictably reacted violently. He and his goons brutally assaulted Minjun and dumped him at an abandoned construction site. Songbin wielded a brick, which he used to repeatedly strike Minjun's head. Their intention was to teach this bastard obedience. But Minjun had reached his breaking point. In a broken and defeated voice, he told Songbin to just kill him, stating he had lost the will to live and that death seemed like the only way out. For some reason, this response infuriated Songbin even further. He kicked Minjun again before leaving, issuing a final, chilling threat: if Minjun attempted suicide and mentioned them in a note, Songbin vowed to find his mother and harm her. With that, they left Minjun alone in the construction site, broken and battered. Dawn was approaching as Minjun staggered his way home. After all that had transpired, his only thought was a desperate wish for the world to end by the next day. Knowing this was impossible, he concluded his best option was to climb to the top of the luxury high-rise apartment complex he had often gazed at and jump. It would all be over quickly. With this plan firmly in mind, he started walking towards the complex, prepared to end his life. It was then that he encountered Yana, the girl who despised him most. She immediately expressed annoyance at his mere presence and demanded to know why he was loitering around her apartment complex, which was clearly not his home. Noticing his battered state, she dismissed the idea that he was there for a delivery, suspecting he was instead planning a burglary. She ended up reminding him just how pathetic she found him. Minjun reflected that this was precisely why he had come there, to end his suffering permanently. Yana, however, began questioning his bruised appearance, asking if someone had assaulted him. She expressed genuine anger that he never defended himself, simply enduring the beatings like a passive animal. After her lengthy rant, Minjun simply turned and walked away from the luxury apartment building. The entitled girl continued complaining about his apparent disregard, but eventually stopped, deciding to resume the conversation the next day. Later, Minjun returned to his own less than pleasant, cramped apartment. Seeking an escape, he switched on his PC, put on his headphones, and immersed himself in video games. Reflecting on the earlier encounter, he conceded that Yana hadn't been entirely wrong. Perhaps he did deserve her harsh words. This realization solidified his decision: he would not return to school ever. Starting the next day, he planned to find employment and contribute to his mother's household expenses. As night fell, Minjun was still engrossed in his first-person shooter game, mowing down virtual waves of zombies. Suddenly, his friends announced via chat that they were logging off. This struck Minjun as odd, given it was only 10 p.m., leaving 2 hours until midnight. His friends then reminded him about the breaking news concerning the outbreak: the outside world was descending into chaos. Just then, Minjun heard disturbances outside his apartment. He cautiously approached the front door as someone began knocking insistently. Checking the peephole first, he saw one of his upstairs neighbors, voice trembling, asking to be let in. Minjun initially assumed the man was drunk again. Tragically, the man at the door was no longer just his neighbor. Minjun made the critical error of opening the gate. The first thing he noticed was the man covered in blood, sporting a horrific wound across his abdomen. Even then, Minjun's initial thought was that the man was severely injured, and he considered calling emergency services. But then, the zombified man emitted a terrifying screech and lunged at Minjun. They both tumbled down, the zombie pinning him. Minjun, realizing the man was utterly deranged, finally managed to kick him away. He scrambled back inside and secured the door, his heart pounding, breath coming in ragged gasps, legs trembling uncontrollably. It was clear this was not his neighbor acting normally. He grabbed his phone to contact the police, but found no signal. It was then he saw the flood of emergency alerts on his screen, reporting unknown attacks occurring in Seoul and other unspecified locations. The alerts strongly advised everyone to remain indoors for safety. Simultaneously, the sounds of chaos intensified just outside his basement window. Opening it slightly to peek out, he witnessed a scene of pure horror, people violently attacking each other. He even spotted his zombified neighbor still roaming the street, contributing to the mayhem. A sudden wave of worry for his mother washed over him. He tried calling her, but the lack of connection persisted. As the night wore on, Minjun extinguished the apartment lights and huddled in a corner beneath his blanket. He repeatedly tried to connect to any network, but failed: no signal, no updates. Desperate for information, he turned on the television. A news anchor reported on a series of brutal attacks, described as murders, being carried out by unidentified civilians nationwide. The government labeled it an act of indiscriminate terrorism, claiming they were investigating the cause and perpetrators, but offered no concrete details. The anchor repeatedly urged citizens to stay indoors, lock their doors and windows, and avoid all contact with the outside. A subsequent update delivered more grim news: Busan had also fallen. Similar violent incidents were erupting not only in major cities like Seoul, Busan, and Incheon but also in smaller towns. Although police and military forces were being deployed, the situation appeared to be spiraling rapidly out of control. Minjun felt overwhelmed by hopelessness as wave after wave of terrifying news hit him. He was so stunned it felt like a waking nightmare. Based on the reports, it seemed the world had succumbed to a zombie apocalypse, a scenario he previously believed only existed in games and movies, too ridiculous to be real. Yet, everything he had witnessed firsthand corroborated the news. He craved answers, and hiding in his dim apartment wouldn't provide them. He resolved to secure the building's main entrance more effectively. Before opening his apartment door, he carefully checked the peephole for any lurking dangers. Seeing the coast was clear, he cautiously stepped out. Ascending the stairs to the ground floor, he was struck by the eerie silence. Reaching the building's main door, he peered outside and spotted a lone zombie wandering the street. He quickly shut the door and engaged every lock. His next thought was to check upstairs for survivors. However, the profound silence suggested the upper floors were empty. For the moment, he decided against risking an exploration, opting to wait until morning. He held on to the hope that police or military would eventually arrive to rescue them. He tried the TV again, hoping for updates, but the broadcast signal died before anything significant could be conveyed. With no other options, he lay down, attempting to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. The horrific events kept replaying in his mind. More than anything, an unsettling realization crept in. Just the previous day, he had wished for death because life felt unbearable. He had even wished for the world to end. Now, it felt as though his wish had manifested, but it hadn't made his life easier. Instead, he was now fighting simply to survive. It didn't require much thought to understand that fundamentally, nothing had changed. It was hell before, and it was hell now. Consequently, the zombies and the apparent end of the world didn't terrify him as much as they might have otherwise. His life had already reached rock bottom. Morning arrived, revealing streets cluttered with abandoned vehicles and dotted with roaming zombies. Minjun cautiously opened the main door again to survey the scene. The air itself felt wrong, thick with the metallic stench of blood, so overpowering he slammed the door shut and resecured the locks. Venturing outside without preparation would be suicide. He returned to his kitchen to take stock of his supplies. Fortunately, he was reasonably well stocked: 4 packs of ramen, 6 cup noodles, some instant rice, and a supply of uncooked rice. Combined, it was enough food to sustain him for about 2 weeks. He also had 3 bottles of water, and thankfully, the tap water and gas line were still functional for the time being. If he rationed carefully, he could potentially survive for a month within the apartment. He hoped this would be sufficient time for a rescue team to find him. His primary concern remained his mother. With no network access, he had no means of confirming her safety. All he could do was cling to the hope that she was alive and unharmed. He then remembered the building housed 5 households in total. One of these was the rooftop room occupied by a college student, whom Minjun recalled being something of a playboy, often bringing his girlfriend over on Tuesdays for privacy. Since the previous day had been Tuesday, Minjun deduced the couple might still be trapped up there. Summoning his courage, Minjun began ascending the stairs, checking each apartment door along the way. Every unit appeared empty. The only remaining possibility was the rooftop room. As he climbed the final flight of stairs, he hoped to find the couple safe. Strangely, the door leading to the roof itself was ajar. Upon reaching the rooftop, he noticed the door to the college student's room was also open. Naturally, he moved towards it and peered inside. What he saw horrified him. Across the room lay the lifeless body of the girl. The college student, however, had transformed into one of the flesh-craving zombies. Luckily, Minjun's gaze didn't immediately fall on the gruesome corpse due to his angle. His eyes first registered the shocking amount of blood smeared across the floor, enough to make him stumble back instinctively. He quickly abandoned any thought of further exploration. As he attempted a quiet retreat, he accidentally knocked over a plant pot, instantly drawing the zombie's attention. Hearing guttural, snarling noises from within the room, Minjun turned and sprinted away with surprising speed. However, his clumsy footing betrayed him, and he tripped. The zombified student emerged from the room and immediately lunged at him. Thinking fast, Minjun cleverly used the zombie's own momentum against it. He ducked low, allowing the creature to fly over him, and then pushed the staggering zombie forcefully, sending it tumbling off the edge of the roof. The sight of the falling figure momentarily stole his breath. His strength failing him, Minjun collapsed to his knees. Without wasting another moment, he scrambled back downstairs, securing the door behind him before locking himself safely within his own apartment. The terrifying life-or-death struggle with the creature left him shaken. He couldn't reconcile the image of the rooftop college student, previously a symbol of hope, with the brainless undead he had become. More disturbingly, the realization that he had directly caused the student's fall weighed heavily on him. He tried to rationalize his actions, telling himself it was purely self-defense. The college guy had attacked first. Another night descended, and like the previous one, Minjun was confined to the darkness of his semi-basement dwelling. He sat in silence, the guilt over the college student's demise gnawing at him. Unable to bear it, he ventured back outside, hoping to confront the reality of what the student had become. A zombie stood before him. As it turned, Minjun recognized the distinctively broken neck of the college student hanging unnaturally. A strange mix of relief and fear washed over him, relief that his senior wasn't truly dead in the conventional sense, but fear because the being before him was no longer human. Whispering an internal apology, Minjun retreated and shut the door. This encounter cemented the harsh truth: these individuals were now simply zombies. The following day marked the third since the apocalypse began. Minjun prepared a meal in a hot pot, strategically using ingredients that required cooking while the gas supply lasted. His plan was to save the pre-packaged food for later. A persistent thought echoed in his mind: waiting passively for rescue was foolish. If his food ran out before help arrived, he'd be finished. He felt a sliver of relief knowing his building seemed clear of zombies, the only one having been the rooftop student who was now outside. To potentially signal rescue teams or other survivors, he considered lighting a fire on the roof. Moreover, he began seriously contemplating leaving the apartment building altogether. Having already resigned himself to death just days before, the prospect of dying outside no longer seemed daunting. Surviving 2 near-death encounters had paradoxically boosted his confidence. He felt capable of facing these monsters if necessary. The zombie-like figures didn't instill the same terror in him anymore. Suddenly, his phone rang, an almost miraculous occurrence. It was his mother. He answered instantly. His concerned mother inquired about his safety. He assured her he was alone and safe inside his apartment, then asked about her location. She explained that she had encountered the military during the evacuation 2 days prior and was now safe in a shelter in Songnam. She told him not to worry and promised to request a rescue team be sent for him. Their brief conversation ended abruptly as the signal died again. Nevertheless, hearing his mother's voice and knowing she was alive brought Minjun immense relief. Unexpectedly, messages started coming through on his phone. They were from his 2 otaku friends, Sunho and Bung Joon. The fact they could text meant they were alive and presumably safe in their homes. Their light-hearted tone, cracking jokes amidst the chaos, suggested they were perhaps too comfortable, or maybe found strength in humor. Since his friends lived near each other, Minjun guessed they had likely managed to support one another through the initial outbreak. Including them, he had now confirmed the survival of his mother and his 2 friends. There was still one person whose fate remained unknown, the one occupying his thoughts despite everything: Yana, the girl who constantly belittled him. Of everyone he knew, she lived closest to his apartment. Yet, he doubted she would ever willingly return to his place, recalling her intense dislike for it during her last visit. A flashback illustrated this. Song Bin and his cronies were lounging around Minjun's apartment. One of them had invited Yana over, mischievously neglecting to mention it was Minjun's home, the home of someone she openly despised. They found the situation amusing, while Minjun was internally panicking at the thought of her arrival. When Yana finally showed up and saw the cramped, messy space, she literally froze at the threshold. She visibly hesitated, reluctant to step foot into such a dirty and cheap place. Ultimately, she turned and left without even entering, citing the disgusting smell of cigarettes and the sticky, musty floor. She expressed annoyance that they hadn't warned her it was Minjun's place. The incident left Minjun devastated. Her disgusted reaction hurt him more than the bullies occupying his home. Back in the present, sitting on his toilet, Minjun found himself genuinely curious about Yana's fate. He reasoned that even if she had turned into a zombie, it wouldn't completely break his heart. He recalled Yana's father was a hospital director, speculating that he might possess knowledge about the virus, potentially even contributing to finding a cure. He quickly chastised himself for worrying more about her survival than his own. Given her affluent background, she might have already escaped to safety. Just then, a familiar voice called out his name from outside. Hearing it sent a wave of unease through him. The voice persisted, pleading for him to open the door. He finally recognized it. It was Yana, calling to him from outside his window. She was trying to keep her voice down, but it was enough to attract nearby zombies, who began converging on her location. Seeing the undead rushing towards her, Yana grew desperate, yelling for Minjun to open the door. He quickly unlatched it, pulled her inside, and slammed it shut again. Yana was utterly terrified, drenched in sweat and struggling to catch her breath. No matter how deeply she inhaled, she couldn't calm her racing heart. Worried, Minjun asked if she was okay, simultaneously confused about why she had sought refuge specifically at his apartment. Without explanation, she suddenly grabbed his shirt and embraced him tightly, leaving Minjun completely stunned and speechless. As she clung to him, he finally managed to ask what had happened and if she was all right. Yana pulled back, thanking him sincerely, the kindest she had ever been towards him. She admitted that without his intervention, she would have been overwhelmed by the zombies. Her unexpected gratitude left Minjun flustered, though he managed to express his relief that she was safe. Looking around, Yana noted Minjun was alone. He explained his mother had left before the outbreak and hadn't returned for 3 days, but thankfully, he had confirmed her safety at a military-run shelter. Hearing this, Yana expressed relief. Since they were discussing parents, Minjun inquired about her family. Yana stated her father was alright and hiding somewhere safe. She showed a flicker of concern for her mother but quickly masked it, claiming both parents were fine. Changing the subject, she asked for water, explaining she hadn't drunk anything for days, and also requested a phone charger. Time passed, but a new complication arose. Yana consumed water at an alarming rate, rapidly depleting Minjun's carefully rationed supply. He grew concerned. If the running water stopped, they would be in serious trouble. However, he also understood her desperation, having just escaped a zombie attack to reach his apartment. He decided to ask if she had come directly from her home, as ending up at his place seemed illogical. Yana revealed she had been surviving outside on her own for the past 3 days, unable to even reach her own house. This shocked Minjun. She recounted their conversation 3 days prior, explaining that she went out afterwards to pass the time when the chaos erupted. Amidst the panic and fleeing crowds, she had hidden in a nearby stairwell. She waited anxiously for rescue, but no one came. Minjun was amazed she had survived alone and defenseless outside for 3 whole days. Fortunately, she found an unlocked door off the stairwell leading to a small meeting room, which became her temporary shelter. Her only resource there was a water jug, which sustained her. By the 3rd day, exhausted and running low, she knew she had to find food and water. She ventured out, hoping to make her way home and possibly encounter police. Instead, she found a horrifying reality: undead monsters consuming flesh and killing survivors indiscriminately. Her direct path home was blocked. She attempted an alternate route through an alleyway towards her neighborhood, realizing it passed near Minjun's area. Unfortunately, this path was also obstructed by zombies, making undetected passage impossible. Despite the danger, she mustered her courage and made a run for it. During her desperate flight, she remembered Minjun's apartment location vaguely from her previous unpleasant visit. She clung to the hope that Minjun, having presumably made it home safely 3 days ago, might still be alive. Skillfully evading the undead, she didn't know what else to call them. She finally reached the vicinity of his apartment complex. Minjun was astonished by her bravery and the bold decisions she had made to survive. Yana, in turn, expressed her immense gratitude, acknowledging that finding him home had saved her life. Feeling grimy, Yana announced she wanted to take a shower, asking if the water was still running. Catching an unintentional glimpse of her sweaty state, Minjun awkwardly offered her a change of clothes. Yana completely misinterpreted his offer, immediately launching into a physical assault, kicking him repeatedly while calling him a loser and other insults, demanding to know what he was implying. Poor Minjun was left reeling, clueless as to what he had done wrong. Despite her outburst, Yana, now tired, politely asked for permission to use the shower. Minjun, stumbling over his words and still confused by the beating, agreed. While Yana showered, Minjun fell into deep thought. Before her arrival, he had resolved to venture outside alone. Now, her presence complicated things. He felt a sense of responsibility, unable to simply abandon her to prioritize his own survival. At the same time, their resources were finite. The food stash, enough for one person for a month, was now effectively halved. The situation had become significantly more precarious. Amidst the grim reality, a part of him found the entire situation surreal. The affluent, disdainful Han Yana willingly showering in his impoverished apartment felt as unbelievable as the zombie apocalypse itself, especially recalling their starkly contrasting interactions at school. He remembered her icy indifference before, how she wouldn't even make eye contact, treating him like a mere insect, an eyesore. Minjun was jolted back to reality when Yana requested clothes from him, needing a fresh set after wearing the same outfit for 3 days. Eager to comply, he scrambled to find something, asking what kind of clothes she preferred. Yana, however, had no fashion aspirations amidst a zombie apocalypse, content with whatever he offered. She casually called him a short king in the process, a stray insult for no apparent reason. As Minjun presented his clothes, he felt a bit self-conscious. Yana immediately wrinkled her nose, finding the smell repulsive and requesting something else. Unfortunately, all his clothes carried the same scent, rendering the choice meaningless. Donning the new outfit, Yana grimaced at the unbearable smell, hoping to endure it until her own clothes dried. She advised him to wash them properly, remarking that the rumors about unhygienic single men were clearly true, especially given her heightened sensitivity to smells. She laughed, seemingly amused by the triviality amidst their dire situation. Minjun, perplexed, wondered if she had lost her mind, worrying about smells during a zombie apocalypse. Outside, zombies groaned and rampaged, but inside Minjun's apartment, they had just finished eating. Yana, shifting to more practical matters, inquired about their plan, assuming someone would eventually rescue them if they waited long enough. Minjun revealed his pre-Yana plan, to relocate the next day. Yana scoffed at the idea, deeming it stupid to abandon their food and water supply. She was still shaken from her near-death experience reaching his apartment and didn't want to risk stepping outside again. Minjun clarified he wasn't suggesting leaving now that they were together, agreeing they should initially wait for rescue, aligning with Yana's preference. However, he gently raised the concern of dwindling resources. Yana seemed confused, her logic unclear. Minjun explained his idea. They could cautiously explore the upper floors of their building, scavenging resources from unoccupied apartments to increase their chances of survival. He acknowledged the risk of encountering zombies, as only the rooftop was confirmed safe. If their supplies ran out, venturing out would become unavoidable. Yana recoiled in horror, vehemently rejecting the idea. Despite Minjun's attempts to reason with her about the necessity of such measures in their situation, she refused to consider such bleak possibilities. She accused him of advocating for going outside because he hadn't personally witnessed the current state of the world, the hordes of zombies mindlessly attacking any living human. Minjun countered that her own journey to his neighborhood was a testament to the possibility of navigating zombie-infested areas. If she could travel a kilometer through zombies, perhaps their chances weren't entirely hopeless. Yana was taken aback by his newfound assertiveness, a stark contrast to his usual timidity. Minjun emphasized the grim reality, they were facing zombies, and he knew firsthand that a single bite meant certain zombification. However, he confessed his own life held little value to him, the fear of death was minimal. Even if things went terribly wrong, it wouldn't be a significant change from his current misery. A surprisingly bleak and honest confession. Instead of offering comfort, Yana focused solely on her own concerns, declaring she didn't want to become a zombie and still intended to pursue her education abroad, a ludicrous ambition given the circumstances. Minjun shifted the conversation back to practicality, reminding Yana of her impressive survival due to avoiding direct zombie contact. Perhaps that should be their primary strategy. He pointed out that not all zombies were fast, some were slow-moving, injured, or even immobile. Even the faster ones were slower than a normal person, suggesting they had a reasonable chance of outmaneuvering them. To illustrate, he likened the situation to a game of tag, suggesting it might inject excitement rather than fear. Yana stared at him, deadpan, incredulous that he was casually comparing a zombie apocalypse to a game. Dropping the levity, Yana declared she was exhausted and wanted to sleep. She had been sleepless for days. Minjun gathered blankets and casually began setting up their sleeping arrangements together in the main room. Yana eyed him suspiciously, ordering him to sleep near the bathroom. Minjun protested, reminding her it was his apartment and he preferred not to sleep by the bathroom door. Seeing she couldn't argue, Yana relented, acknowledging she was in a stranger's home and agreeing to sleep near the bathroom instead. Her next words were even more absurd. She casually mentioned she might just sleep outside in the stairwell. Minjun, confused, tried to dissuade her, but Yana retorted that it was his place, so he should sleep comfortably. Minjun insisted he didn't want her to go outside. Yana laughed, amused that he had taken her joke seriously. She clarified she was fine sleeping in the kitchen. They bickered back and forth, but ultimately, Minjun lost the petty argument and ended up near the bathroom door anyway. He was still grateful for the relative safety of shelter, that was paramount. And while he appreciated Yana's presence, he couldn't help but think she was incredibly talkative. The night continued, punctuated by the zombies' incessant groans outside. Yana, still on edge, couldn't sleep. She abruptly called out to Minjun, startling him awake. To his surprise, Yana hesitantly requested he come sleep in her room, the kitchen area, admitting she was afraid of being alone. A genuinely vulnerable moment, softening their usual personalities. Minjun obliged, moving to the kitchen and sitting in the corner. As Yana drifted off to sleep, he remained awake, listening to the zombie noises. Yana explained she had heard those terrifying sounds countless times while hiding outside, yet never grew accustomed to them. They were simply terrifying. In her vulnerable state, she confessed missing her mother. Minjun sat silently, offering no words. Morning arrived, the zombie sounds as pervasive as ever. Yana had slept soundly, while Minjun, keeping watch, was exhausted. He found it ironic how the same girl terrified of sleeping alone was now sleeping like a log. By 9 a.m., Yana finally woke, feeling refreshed but surprised to see Minjun putting on his jacket, preparing to go out. He explained he planned to check the rooftop, ensuring everything was secure. Yana immediately expressed fear of a zombie ambush on the roof, despite his previous reassurance that it was clear. Minjun downplayed her concern, stating he would be careful. He invited her to join him, but she vehemently refused. So she was expected to stay behind while he went out. Minjun ventured into the stairwell and noticed a significant crack in the glass door, a new development. This was concerning, even glass had its limits. To his surprise, Yana's voice came from behind him, complaining about the smell. He turned to see her following him, seemingly out of nowhere. Despite her apprehension, they decided to proceed to the rooftop together. There, Minjun was horrified to discover the gruesome corpse of the rooftop student's girlfriend, brutally murdered. Witnessing her tragic fate, he offered a silent prayer. Yana, who had waited outside, was relieved to find no zombies. Minjun shared the grim discovery, suggesting they avoid going inside the rooftop room. They discussed strategies, considering lighting a fire to signal a rescue helicopter, but realized precise timing was crucial. Yana suggested preparing materials in advance to ignite instantly at the sound of a helicopter. Minjun pointed out a small fire might not be visible enough from the air. Yana then wondered if they should scout for other survivors nearby. In a moment of utter foolishness, she began shouting, trying to attract attention, a disastrous strategy, as Minjun quickly pointed out, reminding her about the cracked glass door, which offered minimal protection against sound. And so, the unlikely duo found themselves stuck together, surviving on their own in the same cramped apartment. Later, while confined, Yana, seemingly bored, inquired about his nerd type, a personality test categorizing people into 16 types. She assumed someone like him wouldn't know about it, betting he probably didn't use Instagram, and if he did, surely had fewer than 50 followers. She was playfully teasing him relentlessly. She wondered what he enjoyed in life. When he mentioned gaming, particularly a zombie game called Rage Z, she laughed, joking that there was no need for zombie games anymore, as they were living a real-life apocalypse. Returning to the nerd, she guessed he was an introvert, a shut-in with no social life. She asked if he was spontaneous or a planner, another nerd category. Minjun, overwhelmed by her chatter, thought she was incredibly talkative, especially considering their precarious situation. He didn't understand nerd, or her sudden interest in his personality. This was the same girl who had completely ignored him before the apocalypse. Yet, here they were, stuck together, and she was his old crush. She playfully kicked him, continuing her incessant chatter. Introverted Minjun wondered if this bizarre experience was actually good. He never imagined this outcome. He was completely lost in thought, overwhelmed by the absurdity of it all. Noticing his distraction, Yana snapped her fingers, calling his name, demanding to know why he was ignoring her. Minjun, jolted back to reality by another playful kick, realized he had been spacing out. Yana feigned offense at the idea of him zoning out in her glamorous presence, and, in a way, she had a point. A few days blurred by. Yana lounged around, casually reading comics. She asked if he had finished the laundry, as she was hungry. She was essentially dead weight, reliant on him for everything, to the point where even Minjun, passive as he was, felt fed up and longed to escape on his own. Minjin questioned internally if he had become Yena's helper, given that she expected him to handle the laundry. Without electricity, he had to clean everything by hand, relying on candlelight. The water system, however, was still operational. Their stock of emergency provisions was dwindling to a dangerous level. Minjin informed Yena he was going out. She instructed him not to be away for long, demanding he return within 30 minutes. She added a serious threat, stating he would face consequences if he made her wait again. Minjin reluctantly agreed. The young man approached the reinforced glass door, which bore several cracks and marks. He cautiously opened a small gap, peering outside before fully stepping out to assess the situation. Minjin explained that he conducted a daily patrol of the surrounding area, sticking strictly to what he had identified as safe routes. After observing and studying the infected creatures for several days, he had gathered some insights. He had discovered they behaved much like zombies, attacking only living beings. Their eyesight was poor, they wouldn't notice someone from 50 to 100 meters away, although this distance varied slightly from one infected to another. Responding to Minjin, Yena pointed out their extreme sensitivity to noise, emphasizing the critical importance of maintaining silence. She also mentioned that the number of infected during the day was significantly lower, 2 or 3 times less, than at night. She continued, suggesting they seemed to seek out shaded areas during daylight hours, perhaps disliking direct sunlight. Because of this, Yena stressed that he absolutely must never go outside at night under any circumstances. As he observed the infected's traits, Minjin noticed something familiar about them. The young man recalled an online game he had played frequently before these events began. He wondered if it was just his imagination, but the creature's behavior struck him as remarkably similar to the game's monsters. The boy considered that he might be too absorbed in the game, convincing himself it must be merely a strange coincidence. He thought it couldn't possibly be true, but the chilling idea persisted. If the infected were indeed linked to the game, it meant the end of the world was truly upon them. The following day, the building's front door was shown with its glass shattered, a clear sign of the peril outside. Meanwhile, inside, Yena complained about having finished all her comic books, feeling incredibly bored. Checking the wall clock, she felt time was crawling by. The girl grumbled about the delay, thinking that jerk young Minjin was late returning again. She speculated that he was paying less attention to her instructions lately and perhaps needed to be trained better. Suddenly, the familiar sound of a helicopter resonated once more, prompting her to wonder about its purpose. Another day dawned, and from a distance, the city appeared calm, yet an underlying tension lingered. Time passed slowly. The clock already indicated nearly 4:30 in the afternoon. Alone in the apartment, Yena began to show visible signs of worry over Minjin's prolonged absence. In her thoughts, she cursed him, questioning why he hadn't returned home yet. More than an hour and a half had gone by. The girl paced nervously, imagining the worst possible scenarios. Irritated, she complained that Min-jin only seemed to understand things after facing consequences, and she decided she would forbid him from going out the next day. As the sun began to set, painting the city sky in shades of orange, Yena's anxiety intensified with nightfall approaching. With a voice trembling, she silently pleaded for young Min-jin to be unharmed. The candle continued to burn, a reminder to Yena that more infected creatures emerged after dark. Curled up in a corner, she quietly begged for the boy to come back home soon. The fear of being left alone consumed her, and she desperately pleaded not to be abandoned there. Suddenly, a noise at the door caused Yena to quickly lift her head, startled. The door opened, and Min-jin entered, panting. He called out to Yena, urging her to look at something. The boy seemed surprised, perhaps confused, by whatever he had discovered upon his return. Turning towards the boy, Yena's expression was one of displeasure. She demanded if he had lost his mind, asking if he truly intended to get into trouble for being 3 hours late. The girl started to move towards him to confront him physically, but Min-jin stopped her, asking her to wait a second and examine something he held. He displayed a piece of paper, explaining that a helicopter had dropped leaflets earlier, which was why he was delayed. He had been picking them up. With wide eyes and a tear beginning to roll down her face, Yena appeared shocked by the boy's sudden revelation, seemingly not comprehending any of it. The girl snatched the leaflet, demanding to know what it was. Staring directly at Min-jin, the girl was still trying to process the information he had just given her. The leaflet stated that the gangbook area was going into lockdown, requiring immediate evacuation. Yena realized that was their location. She noted the deadline was the following day. Min-jin pointed to the back of the paper, telling her to check the safety status. The back indicated that their neighborhood, Zhongwondong, was considered caution, but surrounding areas were labeled very dangerous. Yena turned to him with a serious expression. She warned that things could rapidly deteriorate even further where they were. Holding the paper, the girl concluded that waiting for rescue had been the worst possible decision. Worried, Min-jin asked if they needed to flee Gangbuk immediately and questioned if such a thing was even feasible. The boy recalled hearing that Wejongbu was also dangerous. He attempted to determine precisely where the blockade would be situated. Given the situation and the information regarding the north, Min-jin concluded they had no choice but to trust what they had read. Finishing his thoughts, the only remaining option was to attempt crossing the Han River southward. Min-jin analyzed the fastest potential routes but realized that Yongsan and Sangdong were also designated as very dangerous zones. Fortunately, the paper showed that Yongsan-dong, not far from their current location, seemed to be at a safer status level. Surprised by his analysis, Yena admitted she had considered Min-jin insignificant, but acknowledged he was smarter than she had anticipated. Crouched in showing determination, the boy emphasized that regardless of the specifics, they needed to leave immediately. Yena became nervous. She asked if he was contemplating leaving right at that moment, given that it was nighttime. She suggested leaving in the morning to avoid the infected and questioned whether they could truly reach Yongsan-dong. Desperate, the girl argued they should wait a few more days, believing rescue would still arrive. Min-jin lost his patience and yelled her name. He stated that if she insisted on staying there to face a grim end, she was free to do so. He then issued a serious warning: he would depart as soon as the sun rose the next day, leaving Yena stunned by his unexpected firmness. Yena then asked if she should begin packing her belongings first and requested an extra bag from Min-jin. Outside, the sun had already risen, signaling the start of a new day in the city. The door remained blocked by boxes and tape, ensuring their safety for the moment. Min-jin then turned and asked if they were ready to go. Yena hesitantly agreed. Before they left, however, the boy seemed to have something else to say to her. He asked if she was certain about not going to the hospital where her father was, reminding her that she had mentioned he worked there and suggesting they check on his well-being. His eyes showed a brief flicker, perhaps reflecting genuine concern. Forcing a smile, the girl evaded the topic, saying it was all right and hurrying to leave. She explained that in their last conversation, her father had told her he fled with her mother to a shelter. The girl insisted again that they leave immediately, leaving Min-jin slightly puzzled by her reaction. Outside, the sun shone brightly through the buildings and tangled electrical wires overhead. Cautiously, Minjin stepped out first into a dirty alley marked with red stains on the ground. Peeking around a corner, he spotted one of the infected creatures stumbling in the distance. Quickly, the boy gave a thumbs-up signal to Yena, who was right behind him. The scene shifted to a devastated street, showing an overturned ambulance, scattered bodies, and red stains indicating the chaos that had unfolded. Cautiously, Minjin and Yena crept through the destroyed street. They knew they had to be careful, as infected creatures were roaming nearby. Minjin indicated the path forward through the debris-strewn street. Yena quickly agreed, following the boy. A wider view revealed the city street completely blocked by a crashed bus. Fallen trees also obstructed the passage. In detail, the bus's broken, blood-stained window contrasted starkly with the horrific scene. Minjin reflected that moving around felt easier now. He admitted to having been very scared before and warned Yena about avoiding dark places. The boy explained that there typically weren't many infected where the sun hit strongly, but cautioned that this didn't mean they never attacked in such areas. Yena asked if their destination, Yongsan-dong, was still a long distance away. Minjin requested her patience while she complained about not having a bicycle. Minjin agreed that transportation would be helpful, but without communication, acquiring it was difficult. He also wondered why all the bicycles seemed to have vanished from the area. Sweating and clearly fatigued, Yena requested a 5-minute break. She felt they were walking too quickly. The girl insisted, stating her legs ached terribly from the walk. Minjin merely watched her silently for a moment. With a touch of irony, Minjin suggested they stop for coffee and simply continued walking. Yena remained behind, irritated, calling him a bastard. Yena complained that he was now starting to annoy her and threatened him with what would happen when they reached their destination. Minjin simply told her to stay quiet to avoid attracting zombies again. A more distant shot showed the buildings of the silent city. Only their footsteps faintly echoed through the empty streets. Focusing on their feet as they walked, Yena asked once more how much longer the journey would take. Minjin confirmed they still had a significant distance to cover. Walking through the blocked street, Yena inquired if they were nearly at their destination. Minjin replied, "Not yet," and asked her to endure a little longer. As they walked, listening to Yena's complaints and evading dangers, the boy considered her requests. She asked for water, but Minjin refused, saying it was precious now. Getting closer, they saw a street entirely blocked by a truck and old furniture. "Do not enter" signs were clearly visible. The two stopped at the sight of the immense makeshift barrier obstructing their path. Minjin commented on the size of the barricade that had been constructed there. The boy identified the area as Yongsan-dong and believed the blockade indicated it was a safer location. Yena expressed relief at the news. Excited, she asked if there might be survivors and suggested they quickly check. Minjin speculated that if there were survivors, they would likely be guarding the area. Minjin noticed the absence of infected and the lack of their usual foul smell. He began climbing the barricade, instructing Yena to remain alert. Already on the other side, Yena called to Minjin, pointing to a spot. She suggested they rest there, as she was extremely tired from walking, but he refused. Annoyed by his refusal and a comment he made, the girl asked what he meant by saying she was exaggerating. Watching Minjin, who was already moving away after jumping over the barricade, Yena stood still, looking quite upset by his attitude. Moments later, the two stared at each other from opposite sides of the barricade, near some empty bottles on the ground. With tears in her eyes, Yena appeared shaken, recalling that they were back in a situation similar to one they faced earlier, referenced as Chapter 0. Minjin looked at her with a serious expression, perhaps processing her words or the gravity of the situation. Lowering her head, the girl apologized to him for her behavior or complaints. Surprised by the sudden apology, Minjin didn't seem to understand the reason behind it. Yena, with teary eyes, apologized again, her voice carrying the weight of the fear she felt at that moment. Terrified, the girl pointed behind her, screaming. Minjin turned his face with an expression of pure panic. A horde of blood-covered creatures ran towards them, their guttural screams echoing through the deserted street. Without a moment's hesitation, young Minjin firmly grabbed Yena's wrist to ensure they didn't get separated. Pulling the girl with him, the boy began running desperately away from the approaching imminent danger. They fled through the chaotic street, dodging obstacles. The infected continued their relentless pursuit right behind them. Yenna screamed in shock as she ran, unable to believe the supposedly safe neighborhood was so heavily infested. Ahead, they spotted a man hurriedly trying to block an entrance. He appeared to be a survivor. The man gestured frantically and yelled for them to quickly head in that direction, seeming eager to help. Minjin pushed Yenna towards safety but stated he would help the man close the door and block the passage. The girl was surprised to hear his name. Young Minjin yelled for Yenna to quickly hide inside. The boy and the other survivor grabbed a heavy wooden shelf, preparing to use it as a barricade. Counting to 3, they forcefully pushed the furniture just as a creature reached the entrance. The horrifying creature attempted to force its way through the gap, its deformed face stared at the man. Seeing the scene up close, Minjin screamed desperately for the creature to immediately move away from the man. An infected creature roared fiercely, thrashing violently on the ground. The improvised barricade began to give way, and someone screamed desperately for everyone to flee. Yenna panicked, yelling for them to run towards the back immediately. Without hesitation, the two dashed down the narrow alley. They climbed over a pile of furniture as an infected creature got dangerously close. At the top of the barricade, Yenna said they needed to jump, and Minjin nervously agreed. The two jumped together, landing hard on the other side. After the fall, Yenna screamed in pain, saying she had twisted her ankle, leaving Minjin shocked. Seeing the situation, the boy couldn't suppress a scream of pure terror. In front of them, two infected creatures ran towards the motionless pair. A close-up of Minjin's eye revealed a flash of memory or a crucial decision. A memory returned, reminding him how frustrating it had been and that he had to fight back. He recalled Yenna thinking he was pathetic for lacking the courage to fight. Remembering how miserable his life had been, he drew a knife, thinking it wouldn't matter if he died there. The girl watched him with a surprised expression at his sudden change. In a low voice, Yenna called out the name of young Minjin, who was lying near the door. Minjin's mind returned to a tense past moment, facing an enemy while resolving that he wouldn't die running away. Putting the knife back into his coat, the boy considered the possibility of meeting his end in that situation. Back in the present, Yenna watched Minjin with a worried expression on her delicate face. Seeing him remain silent, the girl insisted, softly calling the name of young Minjin once again. At that moment, his thoughts were resolute, he wouldn't die retreating like a pathetic coward. Suddenly, the sound of a rapidly approaching motorcycle captured everyone's attention. A shout warned Minjin to duck as the motorcycle dangerously appeared from behind. Caught completely off guard, Minjin's face showed only shock and momentary confusion. Quickly, the motorcycle rider struck an infected creature with a bat right in the head. The attackers celebrated the hit, while another person nearby yelled for them to also target young Minjin. The attackers shouted harsh insults and threatened to brutally eliminate Minjin. With a sinister laugh, the attacker commented on the incredible impact, remarking how enjoyable it was to beat others like that. Turning, the attacker finally noticed Yenna standing nearby with a scared expression. Surprised, the attacker recognized her, calling Yenna by name and asking what she was doing there. Confused, Minjin wondered who this unknown individual who had suddenly appeared could be. Realizing who was approaching, Minjin thought to himself that he was completely doomed now. Holding a bat, Park Sangbin appeared. He called Minjin an idiot and demanded to know why he was with Yenna. Laughing slightly, Minjin regretted encountering someone he wished to avoid even more than the infected creatures themselves. In that tense moment, Sangbin noticed the knife in Minjin's hand and began mocking him, asking if he had planned to combat monsters with that. The bully then asked if the two had just coincidentally met, finding their pairing quite peculiar and amusing. The girl thanked the group, saying she would have been in trouble without their help. But Sangbin simply mocked her, claiming he had saved her life. Changing the subject, Sangbin invited Yenna to accompany him to a safe hideout where other survivors were gathered. The boy, Minjin, then questioned if that place was genuinely safe, while Sangbin assured her it was because there were adults there. One of Sangbin's friends mentioned that Gangbook was being sealed off, suggesting they should leave, but Sangbin declared it was too late in a suspicious tone. Sangbin offered Yena a ride on his scooter, which she accepted. Minjin asked where she was going, and the bully told him and his friend to use the kick scooter. Sangbin's expression suggested he might be planning something or concealing his true intentions from the group. Yena seemed somewhat pensive, perhaps suspicious of the situation or simply processing the recent events. Sangbin's friend asked if it was safe to bring Yena with them. Sangbin feigned surprise but agreed, leaving the girl confused. Sangbin dismissed it as nothing and quickly urged the girl to get on the scooter without providing any further explanations. Yena inquired about Minjin, wanting to know how they would bring him along. The other guy seemed surprised by the idea. The girl suggested abandoning Minjin, thinking he would only impede them and that they needed to conserve their food supply. Mockingly, the girl wished Minjin good luck surviving out there alone. With a small laugh, the guy with the bat decided they would take him, arguing that having one more person in the group wouldn't hurt. Watching everything, Minjin refused the offer. He stated he was not going with them, leaving the other guy confused. Minjin declared he would handle everything by himself. He mentioned that he had a specific destination to reach now. Yena showed concern about his decision and called his name. Her expression was one of distress. Ignoring her call, Minjin turned his back and started walking away from the group, heading his own way. The bad guy, Sangbin, became annoyed at being ignored. He reminded Minjin of a previous encounter and issued a serious threat. The aggressor stated that the country was finished, implying he could do whatever he wanted. He threatened to beat Minjin just like he had beaten the infected creatures. Minjin stared down the bully with a cold and serious expression. He didn't seem intimidated by the threat. The group gathered, staring at Minjin. The leader called him a loser and ordered him to come over to them immediately. Yena was shocked by the threat. She asked Park Sangbin if he had lost his mind for wanting to attack Minjin. Minjin remembered that it was Sangbin who had attacked him before. He realized the guy hadn't changed at all. Elsewhere, or in a memory, a boy suggested to Changman that bringing Yena along would be the perfect opportunity for something specific. Still awake, Yena asked if Minjin had also seen the strange man who had been following them earlier. The boy wasn't sure who she was referring to. Looking thoughtful about her question, she described a man with a hat covering his face and wearing an unusual suit. With this description, Minjin remembered having seen someone suspicious fitting that description near his house previously. Meanwhile, Park Sangbin chatted with his friends, mocking Minjin because of Yena. He mentioned having seen photos of her on Instagram and confirmed she was just as attractive in person. A friend asked why Sangbin was interfering with her and if Minjin wasn't already involved with her. Back on the street, Minjin seemed apprehensive upon seeing Sangbin's group approaching them. Sangbin offered a false apology for overreacting earlier, doing so in front of Yena. Minjin, with limited options and feeling cornered, agreed to accompany their group. Sangbin looked at Minjin with an air of being in control of the situation. He said it was preferable, claiming leaving the neighborhood at that moment would be too dangerous. The bully suggested they first go to the hideout to rest, promising to take him wherever he wanted afterward. They began walking through an area that appeared to lead to a more isolated and potentially suspicious location. Confused, Minjin asked exactly where they were heading, already feeling suspicious about the surroundings. Responding to the moment, Minjin stated he had a bad feeling. He thought the guys might try something against the two of them. The girl attempted to calm him down. She mentioned Park Sangbin had been her lackey since elementary school. She promised to protect him if he attempted anything. She asked about other survivors in the supposed hideout. Minjin questioned if she truly believed that, as he knew their character. The boy insisted, asking if Yena still viewed Park Sangbin as merely some childhood acquaintance. The girl's expression turned serious. It seemed Minjin's words made her reconsider her actual relationship with Sangbin. We saw Park Sangbin from behind, walking down the hallway with a bat in hand. Yena then called out loudly to him. Surprised, the group turned to face them. Yena awkwardly stated they were just returning to their own place now. The girl explained her plans. She had heard her parents were in the Uedo shelter, and she needed to go today before it was too late. Minjin was completely surprised by this news. He asked if there truly was a functioning shelter in Uedo. The boy countered the information, stating that as far as he knew, the Uedo area had been completely destroyed during the incidents. Sangbin cut in, asking why Yena would risk going with someone insignificant like Minjin. He suggested she go with him tomorrow instead. Nervous, the girl tried to change the subject. She said it was urgent and they needed to leave immediately. Pulling Minjin, Yena attempted to get out of there quickly with a nervous laugh, but the group didn't seem convinced. However, a rusty baseball bat suddenly appeared, blocking their path and preventing them from passing. Sangbin stared firmly at the girl. He repeated that he had already warned her, if she was leaving, it would be with his group, and only tomorrow. Minjin asked if there was something going on between the two of them and what had suddenly affected them. Frightened by the sudden question, Yena only muttered Park Sangbin's name. Clenching her fist, the girl said she would go with him and asked if Minjin was being serious. With an expression suggesting he had anticipated this, Minjin thought he had figured this outcome would occur. Agreeing, the boy suggested they just go along with Sangbin for now to talk. Yena seemed apprehensive. She commented that the sun would set soon anyway. Soon after, the three left the house and walked down an alley with Sangbin leading, holding a bat. Reaching their destination, Sangbin stopped and looked at a building under construction ahead. Minjin confirmed it was the correct location and noticed barricades on both sides meant to keep the infected out. Analyzing the makeshift structure, he thought it looked hastily assembled despite the effort put into it. Next to him, Yena remained nervous, looking at the building while a drop of sweat ran down her face. Noticing her nervousness, Minjin gently held the girl's wrist to reassure her. Looking at her, the boy told Yena not to worry about the situation. He then promised he would not leave her side, regardless of what happened there. A little calmer from his words, Yena still seemed tense about what lay ahead. Unexpectedly, Yena let out a loud scream. The girl confessed she had become really scared. Horrified, Yena saw the infected creatures outside. She asked if the place was safe and demanded Minjin do something. Getting closer, another person told Yena to relax. He assured her the infected would not be able to break in. The girl, however, did not calm down. She thought the barricade looked like it could collapse at any moment. Looking down from above, the group realized the seriousness of the situation. They were completely surrounded by infected creatures below. One of the guys complained about the improvised shelter. He then told everyone to climb a nearby ladder. Minjin understood the plan was to ascend to the second floor. He reasoned that if they pulled up the ladder, the infected wouldn't be able to climb. Wasting no time, Minjin began climbing the makeshift ladder. Soon after, Minjin reached the upper floor. He was followed by Yena and the guy who alerted another person, Hyung, about their arrival. The trio entered a new makeshift room on the upper floor. Two other individuals were there, including a large man who was seated. The large man noticed their arrival. He loudly asked what was happening, mentioning the new guests. The boy explained they were from the same school and class. He asked the man if he had heard of Yena, which surprised him. Excited, the man introduced himself as Lee Banju. He said he had genuinely wanted to meet Yena and had even followed her on social media. The boy mentioned he had previously told Yena about Banju. The girl, however, didn't remember him and found him quite strange. Banju assured her the place was completely safe and told her to relax. Yena hesitantly mentioned rumors about Gangbuk being sealed off. Minjin replied that he was also still awake and asked if something had happened to her. Yena remained silent for a moment before asking if Minjin had ever killed anyone before. Surprised by the sudden question, the boy quickly denied it. He had never taken a life. The girl explained that she couldn't stop thinking about the men she had encountered earlier. Minjin listened attentively as Yena recounted the frightening incident she had experienced. She confessed that one of them had grabbed her and how she had felt completely powerless in the situation. Seeing how shaken she was, Minjin attempted to comfort her, saying, "It's over now." Yena mentioned it was all Park Sangbin's fault, feeling betrayed by him. A hand tightly grabbed Yena's arm, pulling her away from where she was standing. Turning around, Yena asked to speak with Park Sangbin for a moment, who ignored her. Impatient, Sangbin asked what she wanted. Yena asked him to stop and allow her to leave. The girl stated she honestly hadn't known it would be like this and disliked that kind of environment. She said she couldn't stay and didn't believe the story about the blocked bridge. Yena stated she was returning to where she had been heading before and turned to leave. When Yena called for Minjin to leave with her, Sangbin grabbed her arm, stopping her. Suddenly, a bully glared at Yena and aggressively asked if she thought she could just depart. The man continued, asserting that the world didn't operate according to Yena's desires. As the girl looked at him with fear, he forcefully grabbed Yena's arm, preventing her from leaving. Minjin then intervened, attempting to pry the man's hand off and asking him to release the girl. The large man looked at young Minjin, surprised by the sudden boldness of the boy with glasses. Annoyed, the man questioned if Minjin had finally lost his senses for meddling in matters that didn't concern him. With a frightened expression, Yena stammered while her arm was still being held. However, someone else soon grabbed the arm of the man holding her. Trying to intervene, Minjin once again asked the aggressor to let go of Yena's arm. Surprised by this interference, Songbin, referred to as Xiambin in this instance, merely let out a mocking laugh. Staring at the boy with glasses, Songbin accused him of losing his mind. Elsewhere, a group of survivors was seen observing a pile of rubble. Provoking the boy, Songbin asked if he intended to use the knife he had earlier. Yena screamed for him to stop. Continuing his provocations, Songbin called Minjin a coward and challenged him. Suddenly, two other individuals arrived, causing Minjin to wonder what was happening. Yena complained about the dirty conditions, but the large man stated they would sleep in the tent. Additionally, the chubby man, Banju, revealed that Minjin was carrying a kitchen knife. Shocked by this revelation and calling Minjin Four Eyes, Banju demanded he hand over the knife, threatening consequences if he refused. In his thoughts, Minjin knew he couldn't surrender his only weapon but also recognized he couldn't fight 5 people alone. One of the thugs explained the hierarchy, stating that Banju was the boss and he was second in command. Banju then declared that with the country in a state of emergency and without leadership, the place had become a lawless hell, giving 2 warnings before eliminating someone. Uncomfortably, the chubby man patted Yena on the shoulder, telling her to go rest. Questioned if she had cursed, Yena quickly denied it, explaining she was just scared due to the recent days of panic. Showing off his luxury camping tent, he invited her again to rest inside. Realizing the man was unhinged, Yena quickly thought of a way to buy time and called him Appa. Stammering slightly, the girl said she was hungry and asked if she could eat something, surprising Banju. Excited by the idea, Banju announced they had a lot of pork belly. Minjin suggested a party, and everyone celebrated. Observing the situation, Minjin thought to himself that this was the worst-case scenario. The place had no police, it was essentially a lawless zone with zero safety. A bit awkwardly, Banju apologized to Yena and called her cute. Minjin realized these thugs were as dangerous as the infected and that Yena was in danger. Worried about the girl, he thought he needed to find a way to get her out of there immediately. He considered luring the infected to cause panic but dismissed the idea, thinking of the other survivors. Minjun also wasn't sure if the 3 older survivors were trustworthy. He thought that perhaps at night, when everyone was asleep, it would be time to escape, but he feared they might harm Yena before then. Letting out a sigh of frustration, Minjin felt powerless at that moment. Meanwhile, the pork was being prepared on the grill. Banju sat next to Yena. She complained about the smell but quickly covered it up by praising the food. The chubby man told Minjun to bring some meat to the older men. Looking at the plate, Minjin thought the portion was very small and stingy. Deciding to help, he took some of his own food to give them as well. Approaching the 3 men, Minjin looked a bit hesitant. He offered the 2 plates of food, saying it wasn't much but asked them to accept it. One of the older men thanked the boy for his kindness. Later that night, the dark sky covered the silent city. An improvised fire in a barrel lit up the campsite. Away from the main group, Yena and Minjin sat silently. The chubby man, Banju, called out for Yena, who looked at him with apprehension. He asked why she was alone and invited her to relax with them, but Yena refused, saying it was already time to sleep. She stated she would stay there, planning to escape once everyone fell asleep. Annoyed by her coldness, Banju complained that she was treating him badly. Songbin watched this exchange. Unexpectedly, Songbin stepped in and told Banju to stop. Surprised and confused, the chubby man turned to Songbin, not understanding. Repeating more firmly, Songbin told the fat guy to back off from her. Furious with Songbin's audacity, Banju asked if he had gone crazy, insulting the boy. Banju didn't understand his behavior. The other thugs were also confused. With a strange smile, Songbin revealed that ever since they got trapped there, he had decided he would eliminate Banju first. Discarding the previous hierarchy, Songbin declared himself the new leader of the group. Enraged, Banju charged at Songbin with a dangerous roar. The quick movements signaled the beginning of their fight. Swiftly, Songbin got the fat guy in a chokehold, telling him to go to hell. One of the other thugs, shocked, yelled, asking if Songbin had lost his mind. Before he could do anything, the thug took a strong blow to the head. Chaos broke out. Someone yelled to finish them both, and the other thugs attacked with clubs. Horrified by the scene, Yena and Minjin watched the fight. Someone asked if they should stop them. With wide eyes, Minjin realized this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Turning to the girl, he said, "Now is their chance to escape." In the middle of the confusion, Songbin noticed the two making a move. Yena and Minjin started running to flee, but the older men yelled to catch them. One of the men managed to grab Yena by the arm, making her scream. Scared, Minjin looked back when he heard her scream. The man holding her now had a knife, telling her to stay quiet if she didn't want to get hurt. Threatening her again, he yelled at her not to move or he would use the knife. In a desperate act, Yena bit the aggressor's arm hard, making him scream in pain. Minjin watched the scene, and the man turned to him in anger. Cursing at the boy, the man charged with the knife to attack him. Surprisingly, Minjin managed to block the attack, grabbing the man's arm. Yena was shocked to see young Minjin's unexpected action. The aggressor was also surprised and irritated by the boy's resistance. Asking where a wimp like him got such courage, the man kicked Minjin hard. The impact threw the boy back, and he groaned in pain. From the blow, the man's knife fell to the ground. A few drops of red fluid scattered across the floor. Shocked, Yena covered her mouth, starting to call Minjin's name. Minjun placed his hands on his stomach, revealing a wound there. The other men noticed Minjin's injury and approached. Calling the boy names, one of them punched Minjin. The men started beating Minjin while Yena screamed in despair. Taking advantage of the distraction, Songbin grabbed Yena by the wrist. With a disturbing smile, Songbin revealed he had been after her since high school. He complained that other girls gave in easily, but not her, asking if she thought she was better because she was rich. Comparing himself to her, he boasted about having money, eating well, and having a better body than the others, with nothing to be ashamed of. He then asked why she always acted superior around him, leaving Yena terrified. With a terrifying expression, he said he would see what Yena was really like at her core. She screamed in horror. The older man, Manager Kim, tried to intervene again, shouting at Songbin. Annoyed by the interference, Songbin kicked the older man hard. Manager Kim fell to the ground, groaning in pain. While the other two older men worried, staring at the fallen man, Songbin reminded him of the previous warning about interfering. He declared, that was the second warning, and now it's time for Kim to go away permanently, grabbing Manager Kim's clothes. Songbin lifted him off the ground. With force, he threw the older man far away, who screamed during the fall. Yena's eyes widened in pure horror at witnessing the scene. Down below, on the first floor, Manager Kim's body lay motionless on the ground. Injured and surrounded by approaching infected, Kim begged for help. The other two older men screamed furiously at Songbin, shocked that he had thrown Kim to the infected. The aggressor, Songbin, ordered his partner to deal with the others too. Surprised, the thug asked what he meant by that. Annoyed, Songbin yelled, explaining what else could it be, and ordered them to throw everyone except Yena to the first floor. On the floor, Minjin groaned in pain from the hard impact. Yena desperately called his name, asking if he was okay. As Min Jin told her to run quickly, Yena appeared completely terrified. Songbin then cynically asked her where she thought she was going. With a sinister smile, the man stared directly at Yena, claiming it was hell out there. He said she would stay here with him, whether she wanted to or not. Lying face down, Min Jin screamed in complete despair. The boy begged to be let go. Looking at the boy lying on the floor, the aggressor, Sung Yen, called him by name. Then he warned threateningly that now it was Min Jin's turn to rest. Mocking the boy on the ground, Sung Yen called him a pathetic loser, ironically asking who told him to act tough. He called out to Yamong, ordering him to help throw Min Jin down as well. Grabbing the incapacitated boy, the two men prepared to throw him. Sung Yen commented that he thought Min Jin was light but found him heavy as hell, and they began counting, 1, 2, 3, surprisingly, at the last moment, Min Jin's hand closed tightly, grabbing Sung Yen's shirt. Caught completely off guard by the unexpected resistance, Sung Yen froze. Min Jin then firmly declared that the bastard was going down with him. With a strong pull, Min Jin managed to unbalance Sung Yen, taking him down with him as he yelled, "To the abyss!" On the ground floor, the sound of impact echoed as the two hit the hard ground. Screams and groans of pain cut through the air for a moment. Sung Yen lay on the ground, his face contorted by the excruciating pain of the fall. He clutched his side, visibly injured. Looking down at his own legs, Sung Yen felt terrible agony. The man wondered what was wrong with his limb after the tumble. Nearby, young Min Jin was also sprawled on the ground, hurt but still conscious. He slowly turned his head towards Sung Yen. Despite his own pain, Min Jin extended his arm with difficulty. His hand firmly gripped Sung Yen's leg, immobilizing him. Sung Yen looked down, startled to see Min Jin holding his leg. Angrily, he asked where the boy thought he was trying to go. His face tight with rage, Sung Yen cursed loudly. He accused Min Jin, claiming his leg was broken because of that act. Suddenly, a new threat emerged. An infected creature approached, drawn by the noise, while a terrified Sung Yen begged Min Jin for help. On the floor above, the two remaining delinquents watched in panic. One asked what they should do, while the other yelled to abandon the idiot. Yena witnessed the entire horrific sequence unfold before her. Her eyes were wide with horror, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. Taking advantage of the attacker's distraction, Yena quickly turned and started running. She fled for her life, desperate. Song Bin, however, immediately noticed the girl's escape. He cursed and, without hesitation, began to pursue her with grim determination. Quickly, Yena climbed onto narrow scaffolding, seeking an escape route in the darkness. With careful steps, the girl moved along the metal platform, trying not to make noise. Suddenly, Song Bin appeared and shouted Yena's name, asking if she was still there. The pursuer ground his teeth, furious at the girl's audacity in trying to escape him. Crossing a plank, Yena heard the man call her crazy and question where she thought she was going. She reached the edge, eyeing the neighboring rooftop as her only hope. Tears streamed down the young woman's face as Song Bin threatened that he was going to catch her. Without hesitating, Yena propelled her body forward and started running along the narrow ledge. With a brave leap, the girl launched herself across the gap between the buildings. As she landed, she stumbled for a moment and let out a small cry of fright. Though terrified, determination shone in Yena's eyes as she kept going. Song Bin watched in disbelief, cursing as he realized she was managing to get away. With a roar of anger, the aggressor vowed he would catch her no matter what. The man ran and also jumped between the structures, following her tracks. However, looking down during the jump, Song Bin realized something was wrong. His foot slipped on the edge, and the pursuer lost his balance, falling into the void. A dull thud echoed as Song Bin's body hit the ground with full force. From above, Yena watched the fall and realized this was her chance to ensure her escape. Cupping her hands around her mouth, the girl shouted loudly, "Over here! Over here!" Immediately, the infected on the lower level turned their heads towards the sound. At the sound of Yena's cry, the infected quickly surrounded Song Bin on the ground below. Fallen, the man looked up hatefully, seeing Yena and screaming her name. From the rooftop, the girl pointed at the aggressor, alerting the creatures to his presence. Enraged, Songbin cursed Yenna and swore he would definitely end her life. Drawn by the yelling, the undead advanced thirstily towards the trapped pursuer. Realizing the imminent danger, the man cursed and desperately tried to escape the horde. Yenna watched the scene unfold, but her concern shifted to young Minjin's whereabouts. Clasping her hands in supplication, the young woman prayed that her friend was safe somewhere. A desperate cry for help from below made Yenna wonder if it was Minjin. Unexpectedly, she spotted young Minjin himself nearby, calling for her to climb up. Relieved to see him, the girl asked if he could climb up to where she was. With difficulty, the boy's hand grabbed a metal bar, beginning his ascent. Minjun pulled his body up with great effort, struggling to reach the safety of the roof. Yenna encouraged him, telling him to push just a little bit harder to make it. Quickly, the young woman extended her hand, offering support to pull her companion up. Joining forces, Minjin finally managed to reach the rooftop, standing beside Yenna. Completely exhausted, the boy collapsed to the ground while she approached, worriedly. She asked about his injuries and if he was caught, but he said he managed to avoid them, feeling dizzy. Suddenly, an angry voice emerged from the darkness. It was Song Bin's henchman, looking for him. Even badly injured, Minjin told Yenna they needed to get out of there as quickly as possible, and she agreed. With a dull thud, Yenna and Minjin collapsed onto the cold ground, the darkness of the alleyway enveloping them. Promptly, the girl turned to her fallen companion, worriedly asking if he was okay. Supporting her injured friend, she asked him to hang on just a little longer so they could keep going. With difficulty, Yenna supported young Minjin, guiding him slowly through the darkness of the night. The night sky hung above them as they desperately searched for a safe refuge. Supporting the boy, Yenna mentioned she thought she sensed infected nearby, as the night was dangerous. His face pale and sweating cold, Minjin murmured his friend's name, the pain evident in his voice. The boy suggested that if the creatures saw them, she should escape alone, leaving her shocked. Determined, the young woman stated she would find a place for them to hide and save him somehow. Suddenly, they spotted a path that seemed free of the creature's scent, indicating their absence. A solitary light flickered intermittently in the dark alley, offering a partial view of the area. Carefully, the pair continued their journey, with Yenna still supporting Minjin's weight. Unexpectedly, Yenna stopped, an expression of surprise and apprehension crossing her face. A slightly open door appeared ahead, perhaps a shelter or another unknown danger. Entering the place, a faint light illuminated a dark and apparently empty hallway. Cautiously, the girl peered into the new environment, searching for any threats. Relieved, she whispered she didn't sense anyone nearby, questioning if they were finally alone. The young woman then helped Minjin into the room, suggesting they rest there for a moment. Exhausted, the boy couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed to the floor, clutching his injured stomach as she called his name. Kneeling beside him, Yenna gazed at her friend with apprehension, pleading for him to be okay. Minjin remained lying face down on the floor, clearly in a lot of pain. With teary eyes, Yenna stared at her friend, deep sadness etched on her face. The girl then whispered with a choked voice that this was all her fault. Sitting beside the boy, she blamed herself for him staying at her house and for attracting the infected towards them. The young woman continued her lament, stating that because of her, they went to the construction site and that he suffered at school too. Clutching her friend's shirt tightly, Yenna begged him to please hang on. Tears streamed down the girl's face as she stared at young Minjin in utter desperation. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps made Yenna look intently into the darkness of the hallway. The young woman's attention turned to the dark corridor where the noise seemed to have come from. Apprehensive and still beside Minjun, she asked aloud who was approaching. Her gaze remained fixed on the gloom, anxiously waiting for an answer or any movement. The unsettling silence of the hallway only increased the tension in the already fear-laden atmosphere. With a slightly firmer voice, Yenna repeated the question, wanting to know who was hiding there. A dark stain began to form on the floor beneath Minjin, indicating his wound was worsening. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, wielding an axe, and approached the pair. The newcomers, two men with axes, seemed quite surprised to find Yenna and Minjin there. Yenna stared at one of the men, a clear expression of recognition appearing on her face. A quick memory flashed in her mind, showing the man who had helped them near a barricade. The mental image confirmed it was the same individual who had offered them help in a moment of danger. Relieved, Yena exclaimed that he had managed to survive, while the man, Kang Hakil, seemed confused by her greeting. Surprised, Kang Hakil noticed the injured boy and saw that he was losing a lot of red fluid. Immediately, he asked if young Minjun was bitten, but Yena denied it, explaining it was a stab wound. Desperate, the girl pleaded for help as her friend was in bad shape, and the newcomer asked about a first aid kit. Concerned, Kang Hakil asked the young woman if she was okay, and Yena, relieved, thanked him for his help. Suddenly, one of Kang Hakil's companions grabbed Yena forcefully, covering her mouth. Meanwhile, the other henchman laughed and commented on their luck, asking what they should do next. The same guy suggested taking the girl, but she resisted, and annoyed, he considered knocking her unconscious. Out of nowhere, Kang Hakil, the leader of the small group who had previously helped Yena, curtly ordered his men to stop. Facing his subordinates, the man gave them only 3 seconds to disappear. Confused, one of the henchmen asked what they should do with their leader, and the other suggested finishing him off. Without hesitation, the first attacker lunged quickly towards his now former leader, ready for a confrontation. On the floor near them rested a nail-spiked bat, an intimidating and dangerous weapon. Quickly, Kang Hakil, defending Yena, drew a small knife, showing he was prepared for combat. The henchman who charged tried a quick, direct blow against his former boss. With agility, Kang Hakil managed to dodge and counterattack, hitting the aggressor squarely. Wounded, the hit henchman collapsed in pain, while his partner still held Yena hostage. Annoyed by the situation, the man holding the girl shouted for the ex-leader not to move. Yena's defender raised the knife, warning the henchman that if he did anything stupid, he would regret it. Taking advantage of the distraction, Yena managed to break free from her captor's grasp. The young woman looked back, her face expressing a mixture of surprise and fear at the turn of events. Surprised, the young woman stared at the newcomer and called him Kang Hakil, noticing a mysterious glow around him. The translators note the glow seems like a stylistic choice, translated directly. The group moved to a safer room, apparently a makeshift storeroom or office in the back. On a table, various first aid supplies such as bandages, scissors, and antiseptics were visible. Young Minjin rested on a makeshift mattress, covered and apparently sleeping to recover. Kang Hakil explained that Minjin was more in shock from the blows than from blood loss and needed rest. Yena thanked him. Curious, the young woman asked how he knew so much about first aid and where he had learned it. He said it was by chance. The man then stated that this neighborhood was extremely dangerous and questioned what she was doing around here. Yena recounted that they had seen helicopter flyers about Yongqing-dong being a safe zone and were subsequently captured by Song Bin's group. She continued explaining that when they escaped, it was chaos, with everyone being attacked, and Song Bin also fled. Kang Hakil pondered, staring into space, that this meant the aggressor might still be alive. Wiping a cloth, he stated that the story of Yongqing-dong being safe was just a false rumor. The man detailed that those who stayed in Seoul tried to contain the infection with barricades, but the system collapsed. He warned that there were now more dangerous people than infected, and girls like Yena weren't typically seen on the streets. Kang Hakil warned that if they captured her, she didn't know what they would do, as northern Suwon was a lawless zone. Sitting, the young woman heard that soon all of Seoul might become like this and thought about how terrible the situation was. With a worried expression, Yena asked Kang Hakil directly why he was there. The man looked down with a serious expression and replied that he had his own reasons for being in the area. Suddenly, he revealed that the next morning at dawn, he would leave for Gangnam, leaving Yena perplexed. The girl, astonished, asked if he had heard the news about the northern zone closure, which was supposed to start that day. With a grim look, Kang Hakil simply commented that it meant the situation had worsened considerably. Kang Hakil continued, mentioning he didn't know if the entire north was closed, observing nearby containers. Adding information, he revealed that the bridges to Gangnam had been blocked for 2 days, depicting a chaotic scene of cars and infected. The man explained that Han River Park was full of infected because when the outbreak started, everyone fled south. Faced with this, the government closed the bridges, causing more panic and resulting in hordes of infected near the river. Surprised by so many details, Yena asked how he knew all that, and the man replied he heard from survivors. The young woman, with a tear rolling down her cheek, asked if all that was true, showing her growing despair. Despite the bleak scenario, Kang Hakil claimed that not all was lost, showing a lit lamp, a translator's note assuming lamp fits, as lamp Irina refers to a portable light source. He suggested that with a small boat, they could cross the river, of course, avoiding the infected along the way. Still apprehensive, Yena asked if Gangnam was really safe since there were rumors of infected throughout the country. Kang Hakil revealed that his sister was in a shelter there, and he needed to get to her no matter what, surprising Yena. Interested in the story, the young woman asked how he and his sister had ended up separated in all that confusion. Beginning his account, the man said that the day after the outbreak, he, his sister, and his uncle went to a temporary shelter. Soon after, the army arrived at the location and announced they would evacuate some people to the southern region. However, only children and the elderly were taken first, which was why he stayed behind while his sister called out to him. Shocked by the situation, the young Kang Hakil desperately asked where they were taking his little sister. A nearby soldier coldly informed him that her destination would be the Gangnam shelter in the southern zone. With a sad look, Kang Hakil concluded that part of the story, saying the army never returned for them. Yena, moved, then asked about his uncle's fate, wanting to know what happened to the relative. He continued explaining that shortly after, infected appeared in the shelter, and everyone started screaming and running desperately. His uncle and he tried to escape together, but unfortunately, the older relative didn't survive the attack. Kang Hakil informed them he would leave at dawn, as every second was crucial. Surprised, Yena questioned why so suddenly. The young woman then asked him to take them along since they also wanted to go to Gangnam. The man replied that it would be impossible. He justified this by saying that with 3 people, the danger became considerably greater. Situations like the previous one would repeat, and it would be obvious that at least one of them wouldn't survive. Additionally, young Minjin needed rest. Kang Hakil acknowledged that the word rest sounded ridiculous at the current time. Desperate, Yena pleaded with clasped hands, revealing that Minjin's mother was in Gangnam and they needed to get there no matter what. Honestly, she admitted not knowing what to do with just the 2 of them. The young woman confessed they didn't know how to escape from there, feeling completely lost, and begged him. Faced with the girl's plea, Kang Hakil observed her with a serious and thoughtful expression. The man commented that Yena had changed considerably since the old days. He continued, mentioning that even though they were classmates, he didn't know her well. Her current demeanor was very different from how she was in school. Kang Hakil decided they would talk more at dawn when Minjin woke up. He then asked them to rest for a bit. Kneeling beside Minjin's makeshift bed, Yena silently thanked her classmate for his consideration. Through the window blinds of the office, the faint morning light began to break, signaling the start of a new day. In the room they used as a refuge, Minjin slept on one side while Yena rested on the sofa, both exhausted. Asleep on the sofa, Yena was suddenly woken by Kang Hakil calling her name. With a start, she woke up. The man asked if, when escaping the construction site, she saw what happened to Songbin, and she hesitantly confirmed. He then questioned the reason. Kang Hakil firmly declared that he was going to check the situation personally right now. Surprised by the decision, Yena didn't understand. The man explained that if Songbin's motorcycle or scooter was still there, he would bring them back, as he needed to confirm something. Alarmed, the young woman begged him not to go. The barricades were destroyed, and the place was full of infected, warning that everyone there must have turned, including Songbin. She seriously warned that he could meet a tragic end if he insisted. The young man looked away, seeming to ponder. Kang Hakil downplayed the danger, stating it was only 300 meters away. He then asked if she'd like to hear something and questioned if she knew how he escaped North Korea at age 12. Yena was dumbfounded to hear that Kang Hakil had traveled 10,000 kilometers to escape. Unable to hire smugglers, he and his uncle crossed the Tumun River like ghosts, an arduous journey. During those 2 years and over the 10,000 kilometers, the man revealed he lost a younger brother. Holding a modified bat, Kang Hakil asked her to take care of young Minjin, promising to be back soon. In the office, Yena waited on the sofa, worry etched on her face as she watched him leave. Outside, the construction building, the site of the recent tragedy, was Kang Hakil's destination. With dexterity, the young man climbed one of the building's side protections. Determined to investigate, his feet touched the ground lightly, moving cautiously through the hostile and silent environment. With his back turned, he murmured, "So." Preparing to uncover the truth about the place. Reaching the top, Kang Hakil wondered if Songbin had really met his end there. Back at the refuge, Min Jin began to wake up slowly on the makeshift bed. Still groggy, the young woman noticed the movement and heard a sound from the boy, indicating he was awake. Surprised, Yena asked if he was already awake, and Min Jin, confused, asked where he was. She quickly explained that Kang Hakil had treated his wounds, and her classmate was startled to hear the name. Min Jin tried to remember, mentioning the fall from the second floor, but his memory was hazy due to shock. Extremely relieved, the girl held his hands tightly, and the boy reacted with surprise. With teary eyes, Yena confessed how worried she was, fearing he wouldn't survive. Faced with her emotional declaration, young Min Jin became visibly flushed and speechless. She still squeezed his hand, and the young man, confused by the intensity of the moment, just murmured. Unexpectedly, Yena pushed him forcefully away, letting out a scream of fear. Still yelling, Yena questioned Min Jin about letting himself get hurt like that. She thanked him for the help but said he shouldn't have risked so much and asked what she would do if he died. With a guilty expression, Min Jin apologized for the situation. Quickly, Yena denied the need for apologies and just thanked him, asking if he had any idea how difficult it was to carry him. Visibly agitated, the girl mentioned that Kang Hakil told him to rest for a day. She added that they would assess the situation the next day. Surprised by the information, Min Jin questioned if she was serious. Worried, the boy mentioned the closure to the north and stated they didn't have time. Suddenly, the boy felt a twinge of pain and doubled over, letting out a groan. Startled by his reaction, Yena asked if he was okay. Scolding him, Yena called him an idiot and ordered him not to move yet. The young man could only mumble something in response to her order. On a nearby table, a box contained some assorted supplies and tools. The place seemed to be a small makeshift office where they were staying. Unexpectedly, someone knocked on the door of the room they were in. Both Yena and Min Jin turned their attention to the entrance, curious about who it could be. Announcing his arrival, Kang Hakil entered the room, saying it was him. Surprised, Min Jin murmured that so this was the famous Kang Hakil. Without much ceremony, the newcomer threw a backpack onto the floor. The object seemed to contain some important belongings for someone there. Turning to Min Jin, Kang Hakil asked if that was his backpack, the one he always used at school. Young Min Jin excitedly confirmed the backpack was his. Kang Hakil explained he found it on the second floor of the construction site and brought it back. He mentioned it contained clothes and personal items in case he needed them. Adding more information, the man said there was also a lot of emergency food, and he took some. Min Jin remembered his mother bought that, feeling nostalgic. With one last item, Kang Hakil revealed he also found Min Jin's glasses. He held out his hand, showing the pair of glasses he recovered from the site. Visibly relieved, young Min Jin stammered a sincere thank you. Taking the glasses, he thought about what a huge relief this was for him right now. Now wearing his glasses, the boy commented that Yena told him Kang Hakil had treated him and asked how he was doing. Kang Hakil replied he was a little dizzy but fine. Changing the subject, Yena questioned Kang Hakil about his trip to the construction site. She asked directly what happened to Songbin. With a serious and direct gaze, the young man faced her question. Kang Hakil simply confirmed with a brief, yes. Before continuing his explanation, recalling the scene, he stated that, as expected, Songbin was not at the location. A brief image showed his search in the construction building. The memory revealed a horrible scene at the construction site, with everyone else already infected. Kang Hakil concluded that all the others had turned into creatures. He continued, explaining that the motorcycle was gone, maybe Songbin took it, and the scooter was destroyed. Yena asked if they might encounter Songbin again, and Kang Hakil confirmed it was possible but told her not to worry. With a determined look, Kang Hakil stated that he might lose a fight, but when it came to finishing someone off, he always wins. Min Jin just murmured, frightened. Anyway, the man reinforced that, as he said yesterday, he was going to escape to the north. A translator's note indicated a correction. He previously said he was going to Gangnam. This seems like an inconsistency in the original text, assuming he meant Gangnam as planned. Then he turned to the two and asked if they would be able to accompany him on this journey. Min-jin readily answered that of course they would and that they should leave immediately, but Yena scolded him, saying he needed to rest today. Kang Hakil agreed with the girl, stating they could leave when the young man recovered, but young Min-jin insisted he was fine and that tomorrow could be worse. The newcomer suggested not rushing and making a plan first, because haste makes waste. Kang Hakil then revealed he thought of an option and that there was another way to cross the Han River, leaving the other two curious about how they would do it. Turning to a board, he drew a simple map and said they would use line 5. Young Min-jin, wearing glasses, expressed surprise and asked if he meant the underground river tunnel. The boy asked if it was safe, as high-density places like the subway must be full of infected, but Kang Hakil explained that line 5 has platform screen doors and the tunnel should be clear. Kang Hakil admitted the problem was getting there and that others might have had the same idea, or the government might have already blocked it, but he thought it was worth a try. He informed them that the nearest line 5 station was Janghan, and as they knew, it was too far on foot and would be more dangerous upon entering the Janghan neighborhood. Outside, the sky took on a pinkish hue over the buildings as night approached. On the whiteboard, a list of survival rules was shown, with the first item being, "Don't take unnecessary risks." The man then declared that these were his survival rules and began to explain them. He reminded them that the north was already closed, a translator's note still referring to the north closure despite planning to go south, translating as written but noting the potential directional confusion in the source, and asked them not to rush because of time constraints. If they found a safe place, they should stay for a few days to recover. Sitting on the sofa, Min-jin and Yena listened attentively as Kang Hakil dictated the second rule: when exploring, only 1 or 2 people should go out, avoiding all 3 leaving together. With a serious expression, he said the most important part came next. Pointing to the third rule on the board, which read, "Your life is at stake," he concluded that in extreme situations, they must never sacrifice their lives for others. Young Min-jin listened intently to the newcomer's example. He explained that if someone could escape, they shouldn't try to save someone else. With a serious expression, Kang Hakil stated that even he would prioritize his own survival in any risky situation. Sweating coldly, the boy with glasses heard the man repeat never to sacrifice yourself for anyone, reinforcing the harsh rule. In the small kitchen of the hideout, morning light entered through the window, illuminating the sink and some utensils. Suddenly, Kang Hakil called for young Min-jin, who turned around, surprised by the older man's call. The man then handed him a modified baseball bat, telling the boy to take it as a weapon. Startled, Min-jin and Yena observed the object. The young man asked if that was really a bat with nails. Kang Hakil explained that the weapon wasn't just for the infected but also to intimidate dangerous humans. Just holding it would make them think twice. He continued, reminding them that the infected would attack to kill, and when Min-jin counterattacked, he must use all his strength. The boy with glasses reflected on the words. The man said, "A strong blow to the heart or head will suffice," and asked if he understood. After the tense conversation, the newcomer decided it was time and told the two it was best they get going. Outside, the blue sky with a few clouds hung over the buildings of the abandoned and silent city. The trio then began to walk down the deserted street, with Kang Hakil in front, followed by Yena and Min-jin, who carried the bat. However, a doubt arose in the boy's mind. He wondered if it was okay to finish off the infected like that. The boy recalled that they were once normal people with families and didn't attack by choice, as some graffiti suggested. He thought that if he did this, wouldn't he become a murderer? Looking at a door marked with a warning about infected, young Min-jin questioned what would happen if the judicial system still existed, wondering if he would be charged with homicide or judged later. Noticing the young man's hesitation, Kang Hakil called his name, making him look back. The more experienced man scolded the boy, telling him not to think about nonsense and forget that useless worry. With a stern look, Kang Hakil declared that this was a matter of life or death, and if Min-jin didn't harden his heart, he certainly wouldn't survive. Yena murmured softly that she understood the instruction given by the more experienced man. With her back to the young man, the girl asked him to wait a moment, getting his attention. Turning around, she asked if they could avoid that specific street, as there must be many infected. Kang Hakil, carrying a large backpack, questioned how she would know that for sure. The young woman explained it was the smell, a peculiar odor that gets stronger near the infected, and it was very strong there. The man in the blue shirt then asked if she could sense their exact location. As they walked down the deserted street, the trio remained alert to the dangerous surroundings. Yena replied that it was more of a hunch on her part, she didn't detect them well if there were only a few. Then Min-jin remembered something. The boy recalled that Yena had always been very sensitive to smells, even before the current situation. Kang Hakil decided to check and said he would take a look up ahead alone. Cautiously, the older man peered from behind a post, analyzing the path ahead. His expression turned serious as he observed what lay around the corner. On the street ahead, several infected wandered among the cars, with a body lying on the ground. The group leader focused his gaze, thinking about what Yena had just told him. He turned to the girl, asking if she could really sense the infected. She asked if she was right. Confirming the danger, Kang Hakil stated that going that way would be a terrible idea. Min-jin then pointed upwards. The boy with glasses and the older man looked up at the top of a building. Kang Hakil asked what he saw on the rooftop. The silhouette of a soldier was visible. The young man questioned if that soldier was also infected. Kang Hakil showed slight confusion at the observation made by the boy with glasses. Urgently, the more experienced man called the two to come with him, surprising the young pair. Inside the building, the trio observed a messy room with bottles and gas cylinders scattered on the floor. Kang Hakil assured them there were no infected on the upper floor and called them up. While Yena, surprised, questioned why they were going up, young Min-jin used binoculars, focusing his vision on the soldier he had spotted on the rooftop. After taking the binoculars, Kang Hakil observed and said he saw at least 3 soldiers, all infected. Observing more closely, Kang Hakil noticed that one of the zombie soldiers was carrying a rifle on his back. Young Min-jin, hesitant, asked if they planned to steal the weapon and suggested it would be better to just leave. The boy argued that with 3 infected, it would be difficult to retrieve. Plus, they didn't know if the rifle had bullets or if firing it would attract more. Contradicting the young man, Kang Hakil dismissed the problems and surprisingly stated that he knew how to use that type of weapon. In the room, the more experienced man declared that the weapon was essential for them and then decided they would go get it.